We're here with my friend Steve Sharp to talk about Foolproof Brewing here in Pawtucket and why their beer is so delicious. Steve?
Hi, Betha. I'm Steve Sharp, head brewer here at Foolproof Brewing. And we picked Pawtucket for a big reason, that they've put a lot of investment into their water system in the past few years. And it allows it to be some of the better water in the country, from what I understand. And it gives us a really clean palate to start with. Water profiles around the world affect the beer that we make, and by starting with a soft, clean water here, we're able to add different minerals and create the different profiles we need to make the different beer styles we're going to do.
So, Steve, why is the water so good here in Pawtucket?
So a bunch of years back, Pawtucket had a really bad reputation for having gross water. You know, people were notorious for talking about brown water coming out of their pipes and just for a bad taste and smell. And Pawtucket invested lots of money into a new water treatment facility that allows them to have some really top quality water. And so that was one of the reasons that the original owner, was attracted to come here, is that that treatment allowed us to have good water for brewing. And there's a saying that if you like the water you drink, then it's going to be good for brewing as well. And so we've got good quality water here that's very soft and clean, and it gives us a palate that kind of a blank canvas to build our beers on top of.
Yeah, it's really interesting because my parents grew up here in Pawtucket and they went to Tolman High School, and they used to make jokes about what color the water would be today.
Exactly. That reputation still stands, even though it's been, I think, 10 plus years since they've updated all their treatment facilities. There's still that history that everybody thinks about bad water in Pawtucket, but it's not the case anymore. And Pawtucket's also become a hub for brewing in Rhode Island. We've got 4 different breweries here now, the biggest, the smallest, and a couple in between. And I've heard stories that there's other breweries looking to come here, partly because the city's been good to work with, but partly because we have a great water profile, and that makes all the difference. Water is well over 90% of what's in your can or in your glass, and if you don't have good water to start with, you're not going to get good beer at the end.
Nice. Tell me more. What is a water profile?
So we do different tests on the water. We send it out to labs, and they can tell us about the pH level of the water, which we want to keep pretty neutral around 7, and then we adjust with different minerals and whatnot. We want to know about what different minerals and ions and how much alkalinity is in the water. And so in different parts of the world, parts of England where the IPA became famous, they had a very high mineral content of the water. And to this day, home brewers and big brewers alike will add minerals to their water to try and match that profile to get that very mineral rich water that works really well for an IPA. In Ireland, where the stout became famous, they found out that they had a very alkaline water, and they found that the very dark malts balanced very well with that alkaline water and made delicious stouts, and so that became the beer they're known for. In the Czech Republic, in the little town of Pilsen, they have some of the softest natural water in the world with very low mineral content, very neutral pH, and very low alkalinity, and that allowed them to create these very light, delicious beers known as Pilsners, which are still the #1 produced beer in the world today.
All right, so tell me a little bit about how the water works in the brewery here.
Yes, water comes into the building through regular municipal service. We've got multiple feeds coming in so we can get the volume that we need into the building. And it comes through a big, giant carbon filter. It's no different than the Brita that you might have in your fridge or connected to your sink at home, but it's bigger than me. There's a lot of carbon in there. It can handle a ton of water, and it can make sure that any of the chlorine and other treatments that they do to make sure the water is good quality, for us, some of those things are things we don't want in the beer in the end, and so we filter them out. That's the only thing we have to do to prepare the water before we go to the brewing process.
So tell me about where we're sitting right now.
We're up on the brew deck. Next to us are a couple of big tanks. The first one is the mash tun, and that's really where the beer starts. We bring our crushed grains up and mix them with hot water there. Hot water mixes with enzymes. Enzymes break down the carbohydrates to make simple sugars that feed the yeast that make the alcohol and make the alcohol and the CO2 for us. From there, we're going to collect that like we're straining it through a big colander, and it goes into the next tank that's next to me, which is our boil kettle. That's heated with a 1.5 million BTU burner. We don't actually run 1.5. It's heated with a big natural gas burner. We can boil 1,000 gallons at a time, and we boil that for about an hour, where we add hops and other flavoring ingredients to give us the bitterness, the aroma, and the hop flavors that we want at the finished product of the beer. Without those hops, the beer would be very sweet from the grains, and we need a balance.
So what happens when somebody makes beer with bad water? What does it do to the flavor?
So luckily, if you have bad contaminated water, the boiling process, the pH, and the alcohol are not going to make you sick. No known pathogen that hurts a person can live in beer. but it can be pretty gross. A lot of home brewers, the first couple times around, they don't understand those details. They use straight tap water that's, even if it's not bad quality water, it's got chlorine in it still, and that affects the final flavor. And certainly if you go to certain parts of the world where they're not treating things the same, or where the profile of the water doesn't match the beer style they're making, things just taste off, and it's not a pleasant experience.
Cool. So we're here at the end of the line for the water to find out how the results came out.
So yeah, we're here at the tap room, and this is where a small portion, relatively, but part of the beer comes to the end of its life, where we've done all the work on the tanks and in the brewing side, and now we're going to drink it and enjoy it.
All right, so tell me about how pollution is a problem for your industry.
There's a few different areas where that's an issue. Obviously, we're using a bunch of fairly harsh chemicals that are cleaning the tanks, and different ends of the pH spectrum that can affect the treatment plants. So we have to work with them. We do multiple times a year. We take samples of our wastewater that's going down the drains. We send it off to be tested to make sure we're within certain limits. And if they're not, then there's different things we can go through to clarify that and to adjust those things and make sure that we hit those. And also on the bigger spectrum, the hop farming has some real implications, specifically in the Pacific Northwest, where there's a lot of runoff into salmon rivers, and so that's something that's the same way we're used to seeing tuna cans that are dolphin safe. Now hops are being declared as salmon safe because they're using sustainable practices in their hop growing. And then of course growing grain is somewhat water intensive, but there's a lot of movement there to keep that to a minimum and make sure that they're doing that the right way. And across the country, the Brewers Association has a big initiative to take breweries and help them monitor and control the water usage they have, because a lot of water is used to make beer, and only a portion of it goes out the door into the can and the glass that we're going to drink, and a lot of it goes down the drain because we have to clean. We have to make sure that everything is flushed and rinsed out properly. And so we're very aware, while it is a water-intensive business, that we try and minimize that while still staying within safety and protocols, make sure everything's clean and handled properly. So water pollution issues and beer have a long history together. There was a time that we're all familiar with, medieval times, where water wasn't safe. There wasn't a good supply of clean water to the people in the world. Sure. And they figured out that by mixing water with wine, by mixing water with beer, making very low alcohol beers, they could drink stuff safely that would hydrate them, but that would also keep them healthy. That at the time they weren't aware that nothing could grow in that particular environment, and that's why they were drinking it and not getting sick. But when they drank well water, they were. But now we know those things, and it's come kind of full circle to being something that they need to do to survive, and now something we can just do to enjoy.
Well, cheers.
Cheers.